I never believed in love at first sight. Honestly, to me, it always seemed like some kind of fantasy devised by romantics who wanted to justify their own weaknesses. I was too pragmatic for that. An architect by profession, I was accustomed to calculations, to clear lines, to logic. For me, the world is a system that can be understood if you look closely enough at its details. But everything changed one evening. I remember that day all too clearly. My company was celebrating the completion of a major project. We were sitting in a small bar on the corner of Fifth Avenue in New York City. It wasn't a big place, but the atmosphere was cozy. Dim lighting, wood paneling, jazz playing on the speakers. As usual, I kept to myself. I never liked noisy groups. I preferred to observe people rather than become the center of attention. And then I saw her, Emma Collins. She walked in with a friend. I don't know what exactly caught my attention at that moment. Maybe it was her laugh ringing but not false. Maybe it was her gait confident yet light, as if she didn't care what everyone else was looking at. Or maybe it was her eyes, gray with a slight sparkle of irony, as if the whole world was a stage for her, and she knew it a little more than everyone else. I caught myself staring too long. Usually, in such cases, I looked away so as not to look stupid, but with her, I couldn't. "Michael, why are you hanging around?" My colleague nudged me. I pretended not to understand, but something inside me had already clicked. After 20 minutes, I finally decided to approach her. I wasn't usually bold in such things, but that evening, something pushed me. Maybe it was a couple of glasses of wine, or maybe it was her smile when her eyes met mine. "Hi," I said, trying to sound confident. "You look like this bar is too small for you." She looked at me, raising an eyebrow. "And you look like you don't usually approach girls," she replied. I grinned. I was screwed. She saw right through me. We struck up a conversation. Emma turned out to be a journalist. She worked for a well-known publication, writing articles about culture, people, and life in the big city. She spoke quickly, passionately, and every word seemed important. I listened to her like music, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't care what others thought. The night flew by. We laughed, argued, shared stories. I even told her about my childhood, how I built paper houses and dreamed of becoming an architect. She listened attentively, without a trace of boredom. When we stepped outside, New York was almost empty. A light rain glistened on the pavement. "I didn't want this evening, Dan. Want me to walk you home?" I asked. "You think I can't handle it?" Her voice was tinged with mockery. "I think I just want to spend a little more time with you," I admitted. She smiled, and in that moment, I knew I was lost. Our relationship developed rapidly. Within a week, we were seeing each other almost every day. She brought chaos, noise, emotion into my life, everything I'd always missed. I was used to living by a schedule, but she would call in the middle of the night and say, "Let's go for a walk on the bridge, I can't sleep." And I'd go. Emma was different. She knew how to be the center of attention, and people were drawn to her. She made acquaintances easily and made friends quickly. And every time someone, especially a man, smiled at her too broadly, I felt a strange tingle inside. I didn't know what it was back then. Jealousy? No. I convinced myself it was just anxiety, but the anxiety grew. "Are you jealous?" she asked once, noticing me staring too closely at a colleague of hers who was joking with her at a party. "Nonsense," I dismissed. "Just observing." She laughed lightly, carefreely. "I hope you're not the kind of man who tries to cage a woman." "I'm an architect, not a jailer," I joked. But somewhere deep inside, something unpleasant stirred. The more time we spent together, the more I felt like she was becoming everything to me. I caught myself thinking, if she left, my life would fall apart. It was like an addiction. And the more attached I became, the more painfully aware I became of her ease with others. I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. But one day, everything changed. It was the evening I introduced her to my best friend, David Miller. We'd known each other since college. He was my complete opposite. Charismatic, confident, able to connect with anyone. Where I made plans and plotted, he acted intuitively. He always knew what to say to make someone like him. And when I saw Emma smile at him on the very first evening they met, something inside me tightened. They spoke easily, as if they'd known each other for years. She laughed at his jokes, and he, damn it, was looking at her as if he already understood how special she was. "Well, Michael, now I understand why you seem so happy lately," he said when we were alone for a minute. I nodded. I smiled, but inside, I was seething. Emma noticed my silence on the way home. You seem gloomy. Didn't like that I talked too much with your friend? No? It's fine, I lied. She chuckled. Michael, I'm a journalist. I know how to read people. Be honest. I wanted to say, I'm afraid of losing you. I wanted to admit that every word she said to another man made me feel small and useless. But instead, I muttered, I'm just tired. She shrugged and didn't press the issue. But I realized a spark of jealousy had already ignited within me. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I kept seeing the scene before my eyes. Emma and David laughing, leaning in, talking about something I couldn't hear. I replayed it over and over until I felt my heart clench. I didn't know then that this feeling jealousy would become my curse, that it would eat away at me from the inside like poison, that it would destroy everything I loved. I just lay there and stared at the ceiling, telling myself, she's with me. She chose me. I have no reason to worry. But the whisper inside my head was louder. What if tomorrow she chooses him? I've always considered myself a rational person. It's impossible to do otherwise in my work. Architecture is precision, balance, logic. Mistakes are unforgivable there. But in my personal life, everything turned out to be much more complicated. Logic and common sense crumbled helplessly when it came to Emma. After the evening with David, I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. Yes, they talked a lot. Yes, she laughed at his jokes, but was that a crime? Emma had always been sociable, and that's precisely why I loved her. But that night, something snapped in my head. For the first time, I felt like I could lose her. The following days, I behaved as usual. We met with Emma, went to restaurants, strolled through parks, argued about movies. Everything seemed familiar, but a shadow grew inside me. I noticed every little detail. If she was late replying to a text, my heart sank. If she said she'd be late at work, I imagined her laughing somewhere with David. I hated myself for these thoughts. I tried to push them away, but they kept coming back. You've been so absent-minded lately, Emma said one evening as we sat at my house. She was holding a glass of wine, her hair falling over her face. And she looked so beautiful that I wanted to scream, don't look at others like that. Just look at me. Work, I muttered. Lots of projects. She looked at me carefully. Michael, you know I'm not one to tolerate silence. If something's wrong, speak up. I smiled. It was too forced. Everything's fine. Really. But inside, everything was seething. A week later, David invited us both to a party. It was his birthday. I couldn't refuse. We'd been friends for over 10 years, and missing such a day would have meant admitting that something had changed. I agreed, but the whole evening felt like torture. Emma immediately blended into the group. She danced, laughed, argued with someone about politics, and I watched her, feeling like a stranger in my own relationship. David, as always, was the center of attention. He joked, told stories, gathered people around him, and, of course, Emma was there. I saw her put her hand on his shoulder, laughing at his latest prank. I saw him lean toward her ear, whispering something. Probably something stupid, just a remark. But for me, it was like a knife. Michael, Catherine, my colleague, who was also at the party, called out, "Why are you so gloomy?" "It's fine," I snapped. She glanced at Emma and David, then back at me. Her gaze was all too understanding. "Be careful," she said quietly. "Jealousy is a bad advisor." I didn't answer. I couldn't. On the way home, Emma was delighted. "Your friend is amazing," she said, smiling. "So many stories, so much energy. I understand why you're friends." I nodded. "Yes, David knows how to make people like him." "Are you jealous?" she asked bluntly, narrowing her eyes slightly. I froze. "What makes you think that?" "Michael," she sighed. "I'm a journalist. I can see right through people. You've been sitting there with a sour face all evening." I tried to turn it into a joke. "I just don't like parties. You know that. It's not the parties. It's you," she replied calmly. "You look at me like I'm doing something wrong." "You're not doing anything," I said sharply. "I'm just tired." Emma looked at me but said nothing. I felt the tension between us. Over the next few days, the tension only grew. I caught myself checking her phone when she left the room. I'd read her messages, looking for the name David. I found one. a brief exchange about how the party had been great, and Emma had promised to send him some article. That was it. Nothing special. But for me, it was proof. She was thinking about him, texting him, and that was enough to keep me up all night again. "You're weird," Emma said one morning. "You used to be calmer. What's wrong?" I didn't know what to say. How could I admit that I was afraid of losing her? That every laugh she made with another man felt like a betrayal? I remained silent. One day, we were sitting in a cafe. She was talking about her new article, about meetings with editors. I nodded, pretending to listen, but my gaze kept slipping to her phone. It lay on the table, the screen facing down. I waited for it to light up, for the name I dreaded to see to appear. "You're not with me again," she said suddenly. "What?" I perked up. "You're always somewhere far away. Are you thinking about work or something else?" I wanted to tell the truth, but instead I muttered, "Just tired." She frowned. "Michael, I don't want to live with someone who hides their thoughts from me." I looked down. I felt ashamed, but along with the shame, rage grew. Why was she making me feel guilty? Don't I have the right to protect what I love? That night, I didn't sleep again. I lay and looked at Emma, who slept peacefully next to me. Her breathing was even, calm, and mine was ragged. I thought about David, about how easily she spoke to him, the way he looks at her. What if she falls in love with him? What if she already does? These thoughts ate away at me from the inside. I felt something new being born within me, something dark, and I realized this wasn't just anxiety. This was jealousy, real, tormenting, poisoning every minute. I wanted to fight it. I wanted to tell myself, she chose you. She's here. Everything else is an illusion. But in that moment, for the first time, I realized I was no longer in control. The next day, I met David. Just like that, under the pretext of having coffee. We were sitting at his favorite cafe. "Emma's amazing," he said, smiling. "You're lucky, Michael." "Yeah," I replied. "We're together." He looked at me a little more closely. "Are you doubting me?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "Well, you look like you're about to explode." I chuckled. "I'm just tired, work." I said that phrase more and more often. It became my shield, hiding my true feelings behind it. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about work. It was about my best friend becoming a threat to me. Emma noticed I was becoming irritable. "Michael," she said one day, "I can't live in an atmosphere of mistrust. If you have questions, ask them. If something's bothering you, tell me." I looked at her. She was so beautiful, so alive. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to let go of my fears. But instead, I asked, "Do you feel something for David?" She froze. "What?" "You laugh too much with him. You talk too easily with him." "I don't know." She looked at me for a long time. Then she said quietly, "Michael, if you keep thinking like this, we'll ruin everything." And she went into the bedroom, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I sat in the dark, clutching a glass of water. I knew she was right, but I couldn't help myself. Jealousy had already taken root. They say jealousy is like poison. At first, you feel a slight burning sensation, then weakness. And only with time do you realize you've been poisoned to the core. I tried to fight it. Honestly, every time I caught myself checking her phone or searching for hidden meaning in her words, I told myself, enough. You're not a teenager. You're a grown man. But whenever Emma stayed late at work or smiled at someone in a cafe, I was plunged back into that sticky, suffocating fog. Emma was spending more and more evenings at the editorial office. She explained it by citing deadlines, important projects, interviews. I nodded, pretending to understand. But inside, everything screamed, she's lying. She's not working. She's with him. One night, I couldn't take it anymore and drove to her office. I sat in the car across from the building and waited. Time dragged on painfully slowly. Around midnight, she came out. Alone, tired, with papers in my hands. I breathed a sigh of relief, but a feeling of shame immediately washed over me. What was I doing? I was turning into a spy, a suspicious madman. I returned home before her and pretended to simply read a book. When she came in, I smiled and asked, "How was your evening?" "Tiring," she replied, throwing off her coat. "But the article is almost ready." I nodded. My insides were burning. It got worse with each passing day. I started creating scenarios in my head. I imagined her meeting David secretly, them sitting in a cafe, laughing, holding hands. I saw it so clearly that I could no longer distinguish imagination from reality. Emma noticed the changes. "You've changed, Michael," she said one evening. "You used to be calm, reliable, and now I don't know who I'm dealing with." Maybe because you've changed, I blurted out. She turned pale. What do you mean? You're too close to David. Do you think I can't see it? She looked at me like I was a stranger. Are you serious? We're just friends. He's your friend. Your laughter sounds different with him, I said, my voice shaking. Oh, my God. Emma turned away. If you don't trust me, then what do we even have? The arguments became more frequent. I tried to control myself, but every word she said, every smile she made toward another man became a cause for suspicion. One day, I grabbed her phone right in front of her. What are you doing? She screamed. Checking, I muttered, scrolling through her messages. Are you crazy? Her eyes flashed. This is my personal information. If you have nothing to hide, why are you angry? I snapped. Because trust isn't an interrogation. She screamed, snatching the phone from my hands. We were silent for a long time. Then she said quietly, I don't know if I can live like this. I knew I was losing her, but I couldn't stop. It was stronger than me. I started checking her things as she left. The scent of perfume on her clothes seemed like evidence. A stray taxi ticket in her bag proof. Even a new lipstick in her makeup bag became evidence for my suspicions. Everything pointed to one thing. She would betray me. Sooner or later, David kept showing up more and more often. He'd come over, ask us out to a bar, call me. But now every visit was a test for me. I'd watch him talk to Emma, and I'd see hidden meaning in every look. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. Why do you keep calling? I asked him point blank. He was taken aback. What do you mean? You're my friend. I'm calling you. No. You're calling to hear from her. He frowned. Michael, what are you talking about? You think I don't notice the way you look at her? She's your girlfriend, he said slowly. I respect that. Respect that? I smiled bitterly. We'll see how long. After that conversation, he started showing up less often. But instead of feeling relieved, I felt even more tension. He was avoiding me so he could see her behind my back. Emma tried to get through to me. Michael, I love you, she said one night, but you act like I'm your enemy. What do I have to do to make you trust me? I wanted to scream, be only with me. Don't you dare look at anyone else. But the words stuck in my throat. I simply held her close and whispered, don't leave me. She stroked my hair, and at that moment I hated myself. Hated myself for my weakness, for my suspicions, for turning love into torture. But the poison had already penetrated to deep. I began to follow her. Yes, Michael Anderson, a grown man, a successful architect, was turning into a pathetic stalker. I waited outside her office, checked her social media, looked for traces of something that wasn't there. I took each new lack of evidence not as proof of her fidelity, but as further confirmation that she was simply good at hiding. Catherine, my colleague, once noticed me sitting at work, staring at my phone, checking her social media profile. Michael, she said, you're destroying yourself. You don't understand anything, I snapped. I understand more than you think. I've seen jealousy kill people. It makes you a monster. I chuckled. A monster? I just want to know the truth. She sighed and shook her head. Sometimes the truth is, the problem isn't her, it's you. I was angry, but deep down, I knew she was right. That evening, I returned home to find Emma talking on the phone. She was laughing. Who are you talking to? I asked. A little too sharply. With a colleague, she answered calmly. With David? No. She frowned. You're starting again. In just asking, I said, but my voice was shaking. She put the phone down and came toward me. Michael, I can't do this. I love you, but I won't let you turn my life into an interrogation. I turned away. I couldn't look her in the eyes. That night, I sat by the window for a long time. The city roared outside, and I felt like I was losing everything. I wanted to believe her, but every cell in my body screamed, "She'll betray you. She's already half gone." And the harder I tried to hold on to her, the faster she slipped away. Jealousy isn't just a feeling, it's a disease, and I was infected with it to the very core. I always thought I was in control of my life. Architecture taught me that if you calculate the angles, loads, and materials correctly, a building will stand. But jealousy was different. It grew inside me like a crack in a foundation. At first unnoticeable, then deeper and deeper, until one day the moment of collapse arrived. It happened on a seemingly ordinary day. Emma said she had a meeting with her editor that evening. I nodded, but my insides sank. Editor sounded like a code word. I imagined her calling David, meeting them in some cough, laughing, looking into each other's eyes. I tried to distract myself, but I couldn't. Finally, I got in the car and drove to the restaurant where she often went for business meetings. I don't know why I chose that particular restaurant. Maybe it was intuition, or maybe the desire to catch her red-handed. And then I saw them, Emma and David. They were sitting at a table by the window. She was laughing. He leaned toward her, saying something. The image was so clear, so devastating, that it took my breath away. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I didn't know why they were there together, but I didn't care anymore. Everything inside me exploded. I stormed into the restaurant like a madman. What does this mean? I shouted, approaching their table. People turned around. Emma turned pale. Michael, what are you doing here? I have to ask you about this. I pointed at David. You call this a meeting with the editor? Calm down. David stood up. We were just talking. Just talking. I interrupted. I saw the way you looked at her. Michael, Emma stood up, trying to stop me. It's a business meeting. David offered to introduce me to someone who could help me with my material. Of course. I chuckled. Do you think I'm an idiot? My insides were seething. I saw only the two of them and my fear of losing her. Enough, Emma snapped. You're crossing your boundaries. Boundaries. I almost screamed. You're my woman, and I have a right to know who you spend your time with. The room fell silent. People were looking at us. I felt naked, but I couldn't stop. Emma looked at me in a way she never had before. There was no warmth, no love, only coldness and disappointment. I'm leaving, she said quietly, and left the restaurant. David stayed. You're crazy, Michael, he said, looking me straight in the eyes. I would never betray you. I wasn't listening. My insides were buzzing like after an explosion. At home, Emma packed her things. I can't do this anymore, she said. You're destroying everything we had. I just love you. I cried. I don't want to lose you. This isn't love, her voice trembled. This is a prison. You've made me a prisoner of my own suspicions. I tried to stop her, grabbed her hand, but she pulled away. Let go, Michael. I watched her leave, and it felt like my whole world was crumbling. Days passed, weeks. I tried calling, texting. She didn't answer. David stopped contacting me, too. I was left alone with silence, with emptiness, with my own thoughts. I drank. I stopped working. My life fell apart. Every evening, I sat by the window and looked out at the city, remembering her laughter, her eyes. And again, I returned to that scene in the restaurant, and then to my words, "You're my woman." I realized how stupid it sounded, how humiliating. I lost her not because she betrayed me, but because I betrayed myself. Catherine came to my house one day. Michael, she said, looking at the empty bottles, the torn papers, at me unshaven, broken. You have to stop. It's too late. I muttered no. As long as you're alive, it's not too late. I chuckled. She left. He turned away. It's over. Catherine sat down next to me. You're the one who ruined everything, she said softly. But maybe this is your chance to understand. I turned away. I didn't want to listen, but her words stuck somewhere deep inside. I was alone. With my own hands, I destroyed what was most important in my life. The poison of jealousy did its work. Sometimes I think, what if I hadn't entered the restaurant then? What if I had trusted her? Maybe everything would have been different. But now it's only it. My love has turned into ruins. And I realized, jealousy doesn't save. It only destroys. Life after Emma was dark, empty, and painfully quiet. I thought losing her couldn't be worse, but it turned out the worst thing was being alone with myself. The first weeks after her departure turned into an endless nightmare. I lay awake at night, smoking on the balcony and staring at the windows of the neighboring houses. I imagined her in every silhouette behind the curtain. Sometimes I caught myself waiting for a call, any call, even a quick text message. But the phone was silent. Work became hell. The architectural projects that used to bring me joy turned into a jumble of numbers and lines. I sat in front of the screen and felt nothing. My colleagues tried to support me, but I saw pity in their eyes, especially in Catherine's. You should take a vacation, Michael, she said one day. You're in no condition to work. If I stay home, I'll go crazy, I replied. She sighed and didn't press the issue any further. Every evening I thought about that night in the restaurant. Emma, her eyes full of pain and disappointment. David standing next to me, calm but distant, and me screaming, accusing, humiliating myself and her. I tried to justify myself. I just loved her too much. But over time, I realized it wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of losing her, fear of being nothing without her. And it was this fear that destroyed everything. Sometimes I passed by her office. I'd stop and look at the windows, but I never brought myself to go in. I'd see her leaving with her colleagues. She'd laugh, and every time my heart sank. She went on living without me, but I remained in the past. One evening, I received a letter from David. Michael, I thought long and hard about whether to write. You were my friend. You were the brother I never had. I didn't sleep with Emma. Nothing happened between us. Everything you saw was the fruit of your jealousy. I hold no grudge, but you must understand. If you don't change, you will lose everything again and again. Not for me, not for Emma. For yourself, D. I reread the letter dozens of times. Every word was a blow. I felt both shame and relief. Shame for accusing him. Relief that my worst fantasies were just an illusion. But what's the point? I've already destroyed everything. I started seeing a therapist. At first, it seemed stupid, sitting across from a stranger and sharing my pain. But gradually, I realized I have to do it. Your jealousy isn't about Emma, the doctor said. It's about you, about your insecurity, about the fear that you might be replaced. I remained silent, but those words seemed to lance an abscess. I loved her, I whispered. You tried to hold on to her. Those are two different things, Michael. The months dragged on. I gradually returned to work. Catherine supported me, brought me coffee, helped with projects. Sometimes I caught her gaze. There was sympathy, but not pity, and also something I was afraid to call hope. But I wasn't ready for a new relationship. I was still living with Emma's ghost. One day, I met her, completely by chance on the street outside a bookstore. She was standing there, holding a bag, wearing a coat, smiling at someone on the phone. When she noticed me, the smile disappeared. "Hello, Michael," she said coldly. Hello, the words caught in my throat. We stood in silence for a few seconds. "You look well," I finally said. "Thank you." She nodded. "I hope you're doing okay." I wanted to say that everything had fallen apart without her, that I went to the doctor, that I thought about her every night. But instead, I squeezed out, "Yes, I'm coping." She nodded and turned to leave. "Emma," I called. She stopped. "Forgive me," I said, "for everything." She looked at me for a long moment. Pain flickered in her eyes, but something else, to relief, maybe. "I've forgiven you, Michael," she said quietly, "but I can't go back." And she left. I stood on the sidewalk and felt something inside me finally break. But at the same time, it felt like I was getting lighter. She forgave me, but she didn't come back. And I realized forgiveness doesn't always mean a second try. Sometimes it's just a period. End of story. A few months have passed since then. I'm still alone. I work, walk around the city, and sometimes meet with friends. Jealousy still lurks somewhere deep within me, but now I know its face. I know it's not about others. It's about me, and only I can stop it. Sometimes I think about the future. Will I have another chance at love? Will I ever be able to trust again? I don't know. But I know one thing. If that chance comes, I will no longer let jealousy ruin everything, because I once lost the most important thing in my life, and I don't want to make the same mistake again. Sometimes I sit by the window with a cup of coffee and look out over the city, and in the noise of the streets, I hear the echo of her laughter. Emma is no longer with me, but she will forever remain a part of my story. A story about how jealousy kills love, and about how the only person I need to defeat is myself.